Good morning, good afternoon. This is Munsung Land Administration Specialist. The topic today that I'm going to present is New Urban Utility Index concept that combines urban growth and disasters. I will go through this content, going to introduce you the background and objective of this study, and briefly introduce you the urban flooding and why this is so significant. And measuring urban flooding damages. And section 4 are going to introduce you the literature review about urban utility and urban growth and its definition, and also the flooding impacts to the urban utility. And finally, conclusion and a few discussion points. So the background of the study would be there are three binding constraints to me, actually reverting me to response to this study. That is, the urbanization is very rapid, not only in the developed countries, but also in the developing countries. And urban disasters are becoming less predictable. And there's increased attention to quality of life. So the objective of today's study is to introduce, again, the urban utility concept that combines urban growth and urban disasters in aspects of conceptual theory. So this is conceptual theory literature review. It is not providing data analysis. So disasters occurring in an urban area affect urban growth. The occurrence of disaster is less predictable, but the impact can be very significant. It displaces many people and it brings a negative economic impact. So finally, I want to introduce you the new Urban Utility Index. It is not actually new. Urban utility concept existed a long time ago, just providing my perspective, a little bit different perspective to this utility concept. So it provides you the literature review about the relationship between urban growth and urban utility, as well as the components of urban utility and the relationship between urban utility change and urban disasters. So urban flooding, the water disasters affect many different things. It affects the flooding control system, tourism, housing market, many economic activities and recovery, resilience of the area. The disasters also can be influenced by many different factors. Some of them will be the climate change and socio-economic development. So I want to give you an example of the US. The urban flooding is led by hurricanes mostly, and their damages were significant. As well known, the Hurricane Katrina in 2005 severely affected New Orleans, displaced 400,000 people, and economic loss in New Orleans alone is about $62 billion. And a few years later, there's another Hurricane Sandy hit New York City, the biggest city in the country, US, and one of the biggest one globally. But this showed that the big city is also fragile to the hurricane and subsequent flooding. And this urban flooding repeats, as is shown the damages caused by Hurricane Ida last month in Louisiana state. So urban flooding not only affects to the developed countries, but also developing countries. It is very important to highlight the sub-Saharan Africa, because sub-Saharan African cities are among the fastest growing. As is shown in the red dots on the graph, this urbanization in sub-Saharan Africa is most rapid compared to the other region in the world. Over 20 years, the urbanization was more than 10% point. And this is also interesting to see that unlike the traditional urbanizations, these days urbanization is happening regardless of their income status. So to give you an example of the significance of urban flooding in developing countries, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, a few days ago, the 7 people have died because of flash flood in the city. And in Senegal, the west part of Africa, the storm water flooding has affected about 400,000 to 600,000 annually. The total cost of damage in Senegal itself is over $100 billion annually. So there are many urban flooding damages, and there were also many studies have done to measure urban flooding damages. Traditionally speaking, there are multiple tools existing. One of the popular one would be HAZAS and NEMO. These two are popular in measuring the damage in regions or groups of industry. But I'm not here to discuss about the technical approaches or comparing these two very good tools. What I want to say is that measuring the individual scale was rarely investigated in case of the flooding or disasters. So I'm just wondering that it would bring useful findings if individual satisfaction life can be measured. Section 4, Urban Utility and Flooding Impact. Before going to discuss about urban growth and urban utility, I want to simply answer this question: what determines urban growth? There are many, probably many theories to discuss about urban growth. And one of those would be this: a city size is affected by the aggregated individual utilities because individuals tend to locate in the area where utility is optimized. This is urban utility concept. The people move to another location where utility is higher because maximizing utility is a common behavior in a free market economy. So urban utilities can be simply the enjoyment of life or quality of life index. So what determines urban utility? Well, there are many research have done to identify the relationship between urban utility and urban growth, but its clear definition is not really defined yet. So, but most of the studies have suggested that earnings, housing costs, and commuting costs are the components to determine the urban utility. Glasser, for example, he said location decisions maximize expected lifetime earnings, subtracting the lifetime commuting cost. Muth and Bruckner also additionally said that the housing cost should be counted. So urban utility is a net benefit of a worker, and to calculate this net benefit, we should know about the benefit and cost. Benefit as a worker can be the salary or bank interest or rent money from the rentee, but gonna say simply earnings. Cost function would be the combination of the two, as I explained, housing cost and commuting cost. Housing cost can be differed by their tenure type. It could be rent, it could be lease, it could be owner cost. Owner costs also can be the maintenance fee or the money borrowed from the bank, etc. So these benefit and costs explains hopefully the clear definition of urban utility. What are other perspectives to affect urban growth and or life? Well, in 21st century, there are a lot more study has done to discuss about what determines the quality of life. So many have said that amenities. According to Kameny, he said the workers in urban areas are more willing to trade their wages for warmer winters. That's probably true. Money is not everything. Some may prefer the warmer area or proximity to the education because of the kids, and some may prefer the proximity to the healthcare center, etc. These are absolutely going to affect this quality of life or can be the component to determine the urban growth. But in this study, I'm not going to include this amenity to the urban utility discussion because the amenity factors were barely investigated for their relationship with urban growth and further for the disasters. So these can be another study to be pursued in the future. So how these components change as a result of flooding? Well, I'm going to give you a brief data. It's not a data analysis, but I'm going to show some of the examples in case of the New Orleans as a result of Hurricane Katrina. So to begin with, disasters may seem to bring a brief economic gain. This is speaking to the earning level. In Katrina hurricane, there was a brief increase of earnings. As you see the first graph on the top, between 2005 and 6, there was a brief increase of the earnings, incomes. There's a reason for that. Well, because the disaster was very significant, there was a huge amount of government expenditures to the recovery activities and insurance monies coming into the region. So there were more jobs available. That is the reason why there was a brief increase of income. Housing cost on the second graph, as is shown here, between 2005 and 7, after the Katrina, there's an increase of rent. Well, Victor, 2008, he said the Katrina caused a monthly median rent increase by 48% in New Orleans between 2004 and 2008. That is because there's a less number of decent condition housing available in the market. That is why this rent has skyrocketed into this time period. Commuting time also tends to decline because the industry density and residential density declines as well. To summarize this study, urban utility concept can be one of the useful indices to appreciate its dynamic relationship with urban disasters and urban growth. Urban growth strategies should be prepared without being damaged by any unexpected disasters. All planners, engineers, and administrators will be informed to better prepare urban disasters. Well, it also underlines the need of urban utility agenda to develop in countries where urbanization is rapid. As I explained in the beginning, the sub-Saharan Africa region, this urbanization is very rapid, and there are a huge number of urban projects that have been prepared and implemented by World Bank and other donor countries. But it's also important to highlight that these countries are also challenged by informal jobs, informal and illegal settlements, and limited transportation models. So if there is a significant flooding like Hurricane Katrina, these three factors will be more severely affected. So this study suggests improving these three lacking components in their project preparation to pursue more sustainable development of the cities. The last discussion point here is combined disasters. In case of 2 or 3, a multiple number of disasters happen at the same time. A good example would be the current ongoing pandemic because of COVID-19, as well as Hurricane Ida in Louisiana state. I will research some of the newspapers in showing that there was some significant change of the urban utility components in this region. Louisiana has a tremendous unmet housing needs following Hurricane Ida. Over 650,000 Louisiana people already filed for assistance claim. And estimated about 58,000 people in Louisiana are no longer working because of pandemic. Louisiana is probably the state affected a lot because of the COVID-19. Commute time is also likely to decline because there is increased home-based work and less traffic on the road. So in a nutshell, in a diagram, in the picture on the bottom shows that the urban utility per a worker in Louisiana state is probably going to drop down before COVID-19 and after COVID-19 because the earning levels, income has been decreased and housing costs increased. So before closing, well, the next step would be the quantitative data analysis. This analysis will provide useful findings. probably identify the relationship between urban utility and urban growth, and we can use disasters as dummies. And we can also identify the effectiveness of previous policies to improve the housing situations and job situations. So this is end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.